This video reviews decision making without probabilities. If you don't have a worksheet with these headings, you need to pause the video and put these headings into a worksheet. These numbers are numbers provided in the text as an example for the payoffs for the strong and weak states of nature, strong and weak demand, given the three alternatives: building a small complex, a medium complex, or a large complex. Go ahead and pause the video and set your worksheet up like this. The first thing we need to do is determine what we're doing. Are we doing a maximization problem? So are we trying to maximize some positive attribute like profit, something that we want a lot of? Or is this a minimization problem? Are we trying to keep costs down, for example? In this case, we're looking at a maximization problem. So the optimistic approach takes the maximums of the maximums and indicates that that is the best choice. So what we want to do is use the max function in Excel and find the maximum of the states of nature given a small complex. And because we used our absolute relative cell references correctly, we can just copy that down. You can see we have the maximum of each one. 20 is the maximum of the maximums. However, sometimes the matrix can get rather large, so I use an if statement here. I say if, and I look to the value to my left to see if it equals the maximum of, and then I select all the values to my left here. Use my arrow key since I have Excel blocking me. Hold down the Shift key and just expand down to get all three cells. And since I want to copy this, I'm going to make this absolute. As I move down, I want to look at the value to my left relative to my current position, but I want to see if it's the maximum of the values to my left, and those are set. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. Then once I have that, I'm going to, if it's true, if it is the max, I'm going to indicate that it's the best decision. And if it's false, just two double quotes next to each other, I'm going to leave it blank. So I get a blank there. I'll just copy this down. And I see that there's my best decision. For the pessimistic option, I'm going to find the minimums. So I'll take the Excel function min of these options. You can see the smallest one there is 7 on down. And I'm going to take the maximum of the minimum. So again, I'll use my if statement. I'll look at the value to my left and see if it equals the max of the values to my left. Make that absolute. If it does, it's the best option. Otherwise, I'll leave it blank. And that is the best option. I'll copy it down. All right, that gives us the optimistic and pessimistic choice. I'm going to add some titles to calculate the regret option. You may want to pause the video and place these titles in your worksheet as we set up the regret matrix. With the regret matrix, what we're trying to do is minimize the regret that we experience. And by regret, we mean the opportunity lost, the opportunity cost of not choosing an option. To calculate that, we're going to find the maximum for each state of nature, the maximum return. So I'll go up and get this. I'm in the strong state of nature. Here's the maximum return for each option in the strong state of nature. I'm going to copy this, so I want to make this absolute. Then from the maximum return, I want to subtract the return, or the demand level in this case, for each alternative within the strong state of nature. So I'm at the small complex now, so I'll get the small value, and I'll leave that relative, so when I copy it down, it will bring it on down. Press enter. It gives me a 12. Then I'll just copy this down. You can see when I place my cursor here, press F2, that my absolute and relative cell referencing worked. And now I'll calculate the week. I'll do the same thing, equals, take the max of these alternatives in the weak state of nature. I'll make that absolute. And then I'll subtract from that the level of demand in the weak state of nature for the current alternative. And I'll copy that down. And I'll check. Yep, everything's good. So now I want to take the maximum of these. So equals max. Right? So there's the maximum regret, and I want to minimize my regret. So I'm going to use my if function to see if the value to my left equals the minimum of the values to my left. Make that absolute. If it does, then it is the best alternative, otherwise a blank. That is the minimax for our regret option. Now I have adjusted my worksheet to illustrate the cost minimization method. We just finished the profit maximization for decision making without probabilities. Now we're going to do the cost minimization. Things change a little bit. You can see I've made a few changes. In the optimistic method, instead of looking for the maximum, I'm looking for the minimum. In the pessimistic method, instead of looking for the minimum, I'm looking for the maximum. Now in the regret method, we're still going to use minimax, but we're going to do the calculation here a bit differently, and I'll show you that in a moment. All right, let's begin by finding the minimums here. Equals min of these two values, our small complex option. I copy that down. The mini-min approach here, I'm going to look to see if the value to my left equals the minimum of the values to my left. And I'll press F4. Then that is the best option, otherwise blank. And I'll just copy this down. There's the 2. That's the best option. Here I want the minimum of the maximums. So I'll go ahead and find the maximum for each alternative for the provided states of nature. Copy that down. And then equals if the value to my left equals the minimum of the values to my left, and I'll make that absolute, then that's the best alternative, otherwise blank. And 8 is the best. All right. Now our regret matrix looks a little bit different. We want to minimize our regret, but we want to minimize it from the perspective of cost rather than the perspective of profit. So in the cost minimization, what we're wanting to do is take the current level of demand in this case, or cost, whatever we're looking at, and subtract from that the minimum of the values of this state of nature. We'll copy this down, check our work. Yep, that's working. The same way here, we want to take the corresponding alternative in the corresponding state of nature and subtract from that the minimum of the states of nature. We'll make that absolute and copy that down. Then again, we look for the maximum. This is the same, whether it's cost minimization or profit maximization. The regret is the mini-max. It's just the values that we're using change. So we're going to look at the max here. And then we want to see equals if the value to my left equals the minimum of the values to my left. If that is the case, then it is the best option, otherwise blank. And that is the best option. And that is how you calculate decision-making problems without probabilities in both the profit maximization and cost minimization modes.